welcome back to my channel. This week's video is all about the transporting schema and forms another instalment of my playlist on schemas. I will link the playlist above now, and if you haven't gone and seen the very first video in this playlist all about giving you an overview of what a schema is, I really suggest going to watch that first to give you, that big kind of understanding of schemas and why they're important for us parents to know about before you kind of delve into each schema individually. So I'll put the links in the description box below for that video, and then come back and watch this one afterwards. But if you're here and you've already watched that, thank you for joining me again. And this week we're going to focus on the transporting schema. And essentially the transporting schema is when your child is having that natural urge to move things from one place to another. I always like to link this to us as adults and how this transporting schema might materialise in adults. And a way that this is more abstract to us now, but we'll use all of the knowledge of transporting in the physical sense that we've done throughout our lives, is email. So as an adult, you know that you can write an email, you can send it, and it will get to the person that you've sent it to. All very abstract for a toddler to understand about, typing out a message and it being sent, but you don't see it happen, and it gets to somebody and they can read it. But us as adults understand that because we've been able to move things from one place to another and understand that when we do that, it gets there. And so that little folder in our brain has been worked on for a very long time for us now to be able to understand how email works. And you probably have never even thought about it in that much depth, but you've never needed to. It's just happening in your subconscious, and that little transporting schema is in action. So, as I said, the transporting schema is all about your child moving things physically from one place to another, and that will help them in later life. So I'm just going to go through some activities that you might witness your child doing that's going to alert you to knowing that they're in the transporting schema. And equally, any of these activities can be things that you support your child in doing or provide the resources needed for them to accomplish them. As always with the things that I mention, none of them are about sitting your child down and making them do these activities. It's more thinking about the things you're going to put in your toy rotation, in your play space, the things you're going to have on your shelves available to your child, so that should they be in the transporting schema, they've got a range of tools and resources available to them that's going to support them in understanding and developing their awareness of that schema. So let's get started. So one of the first things that comes to mind when I'm thinking about transporting schema is a range of different bags, containers that your child can fill to carry to another place. So it might be like plastic bags. Think about safety there when you're thinking about a plastic bag. Little paper bags that you might get from a shop. Backpacks. It could also then materialise into little toy prams, wheelbarrows. If you've got, we actually had for Oscar when he was about a year old, a little trike with a trailer, and he loved filling the trailer and driving off in the trike and emptying it out. So that's a really good one to have as well. So those kind of receptacles that you can provide that support your child in transporting things from one place to another. Equally, they might just use their hands, and you might see them carrying lots of things in their hands at the same time and trying to get them to a place, and you think, transporting schema. But you can make sure on your toy rotation, in your play space, that you have those kind of different containers for them to fill with things to transport. Now, equally on that sense, you're going to need things for them to transport in those containers. And this is where loose parts come in once again. So things like rocks or stones, pouch lids, pompoms, building blocks, coins. Obviously think about your child's age and the safety of these objects and the size of them, but it's having those little baskets of things that they can transport that is going to support them in their transporting schema. So having the containers and having the loose parts is really essential. Other things that you might notice that your child is doing is collecting things. I notice when Oscar's in a transporting schema, if he's in the garden or outside or at the beach, he goes about his business picking out, shells on the beach, specific ones, and collecting them and putting them into a bucket. That's all part of the transporting schema as well. Other things that you might notice is your child using like dump trucks. So we have this Vegas wooden truck. There's a rubbish truck, and things can go into the back of it. So Oscar puts like his wooden blocks in there and pushes the toy along the ground and then empties it out. So having those kind of push toys, dump trucks or whatever it might be, is really useful as well. You might also notice that your child likes to move things like sand around in buckets. Obviously, if you're in a season where you can't get outside, you could do things like pasta or rice within the house, and water. If you are doing bath time, you can have some different jugs of water that they can transport things from one into another, and I've done a whole video on water play that might be of use when we're thinking about transporting as well. You also might notice that your child brings you objects. Oscar is a great helper, and getting your child to take objects from one adult to another. So a thing that springs to mind is every couple of days we have cloth nappies, and we have to stuff all the nappies and make them up, and he'll take the liners or whatever and bring them to me, or take things back and put them in the basket, and he loves doing that transporting, or takes things and to his dad to put in a basket or whatever it might be. So getting them to do that toing and froing, and it be real useful work as well, that's really important. So getting them to take their cutlery from a tray and putting it on the table, getting them to get their bib and, you know, moving it to where it needs to go, or picking up their laundry and putting it in the laundry basket, are all really essential skills of transporting that aren't just, you know, about toys or play in the true sense of, you know, it's just frivolous. These are actual, you know, activities that your child can do that are, you know, useful and worthwhile. And then finally, things that you might notice is your child physically moving furniture. So we have a little IKEA table and chairs, and Oscar loves to push them along and move the position that they're in. And you might notice that your child likes to move really, really heavy objects. And that is definitely a phase that they go through in this transporting schema, where, you know, they're learning about size as well, and you know, whether something is heavy or light, and whether they can lift it and transport it, or whether it needs a different tool, you know, put it into a wheelbarrow to make it easier to move. That's all part of the learning process. So things that are essential to have available if your child is in the transporting schema is a range of those containers, or toys, prams, wheelbarrows, bikes, trikes, to move objects. Having all those loose parts to physically move, buckets and containers, dump trucks, trailers, and obviously the loose parts. And then when we're thinking about language that is involved in transporting, push and pull is probably really essential. Here and there, can you bring it here, can you take it there, is also really good. And reinforcing the language of heavy and light, because your child might go to lift something and get very frustrated, and teaching them about, you know, maybe that's too heavy, can you find something lighter? All of those words are really supporting their vocabulary. So I really hope this has supported you in understanding the transporting schema a little bit better, and giving you some ideas of things that you can have out and available to your child if you feel that they are in the transporting schema. Just to reiterate, all of these schemas your child will go through at different times and for varying amounts of times. So you may witness that your child is in a transporting schema in a day, but they also might be in other schemas throughout that day, and then you might not witness transporting for a couple of days. That's all very normal, but it's important to just have these things available to your child should they come into a schema and you don't pick up on it. It's just useful to have it up on your shelves or in your play space, these essential kind of resources for your child to use if they so wish. I really hope that's been useful, and don't forget to go check out the other videos in this playlist, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.